So you've probably heard the word optimize if you've been around Amazon advertising for any length of time. You need to optimize your bids, optimize your budget. But what the heck is optimizing? How should you be doing it? When should you be doing it? That's what we're going to be building for you today. So I have a guest on today's video, Sean Smith. We were jamming back and forth before we hit record on this, and he was saying, "Oh yeah, I stole from people coming up, and that kind of shaped what I was doing." And I'm like, "Dude, you were one of the people that I stole from when I was in the beginning." So I'm really, really excited. It feels like a lot of things have come full circle. So what we're going to be doing today is just walking you through, hey, if we had an optimization checklist, what would that checklist look like? Because a lot of new sellers, there's a lot of uncertainty, like how often should I be adjusting? What should be adjusting? What do I look at? How do I benchmark myself? And so what we're going to do is give you the answers, and you'll also be able to get access to this document through a link in the description. So without further ado, Sean, I'm excited for you to join us.
I am so excited, Liz. I think that, like you said, people ask themselves, what is optimization? How do I do it best? And I think when you're in your head and you're thinking a lot about it, you can kind of get into paralysis analysis where you're like thinking to yourself, is this good enough? Do I need to tweak this? Do I need to tweak that? And, sometimes building a checklist and creating these checkpoints is boiled down to like confidence in your decision making and just making a decision. So I think that the goal of this is to like help people get better at making decisions with PPC. And, because a lot of the people already have the tools, maybe they're just thinking too much. We want to simplify it so that they can be like, okay, this is a checklist. This is how I use this checklist. Boom, we're done. And we're moving on.
Yeah, definitely. So with that, what we've done is we've broken this out, and we're going to be building this live into like what you should do and actions when. So trigger point is time frame, meaning there's certain daily actions we take, there's weekly actions, there's monthly, and I put in quarterly actions. Maybe we'll feel the need to put in annual actions, but I think quarterly often can be extrapolated out into annual actions. But when it comes to optimizations, and here's where everybody gets stuck, there is such a thing as over optimization. So you think about making a lot of changes, and then people say, oh yeah, by the way, you could be over optimizing. You're like, what the heck? So I don't want to over optimize. I don't want to under optimize. Maybe we should just talk about what the heck is optimize. What does that mean? Feels like one of those words that gets thrown around all the time, and everybody's forgot what it actually means.
When I think of the word optimized, I think of a moving target in the sense that it's not too moving, but it moves. Like if it's moving too much, you're never going to hit it. But if it's moving a little bit, you can hit it. So optimized means like I think that like what optimized means is testing parameters and seeing it, like just making a decision and being like, let's test these parameters and seeing if those parameters yield the outcome that you were looking for. So like you said in our last call, which we had on the live, was your optimizations should link to like a goal. So the goal should be like if you want to like decrease a costs, well, then you create an optimization for that. And then what you do is you make that optimization and then you measure the outcomes of that optimization. That's where you can build an optimization checklist, because then over time, as you test it on a repeated basis, then you can build like bigger, like that larger data set of it being effective means that, hey, this optimization is really good. And I think a lot of people, what they do is they chase like shiny new stuff because they chase, oh, we need to try this thing. We heard about that. We need to do this thing. We heard about that. The issue with that is, well, first off, my goal is always to build things evergreen, because managing evergreen optimizations is much easier than making millions of changes all the time based on what everyone's telling me too much and then not really knowing what's going on. I'm not saying you shouldn't test new stuff, but that needs to be in a separate category and where you do that. So It's kind of a longer thing on optimization, but like it's just finding parameters that work for you and then just using them.
Yep. No, I 100% agree with that and agree with what you said on goals. I think optimization to me is changing things to try and get to an outcome. That's all we're doing. We're going, honestly, every single change that I can think of in Amazon advertising, and I've been down the rabbit hole of trying to like simplify everything so I can make sense of it.
Yep.
There's two actions that are done in optimization. You do more or you increase, or
Yep.
you do less and you decrease.
Yep.
That's all it is.
That's all
And
it
what
is.
you're trying to figure out with the optimization is, what is the outcome I want? Where am I now? And do I do more or do I do less? And to what degree do I do more or less?
Yep.
And that's all it is. And people put, us included, put very complicated mathematical equations on top of that to figure out the to what degree or more or less. But at the end of the day, those are the base actions.
Yep.
We're increasing, we're decreasing to try and achieve an outcome. And that's all.
That's all it is. Simple.
So with that being said, I know we do optimizations. We might add some analysis steps in here as well, because I don't know if there's a real like daily optimization. You might feel differently.
We don't do daily. We don't do daily. Yeah, we don't do daily. We just don't see that. We can't measure the cause and effect, right? Like if I change keyword A on Monday and then change keyword A on Tuesday, like from our standpoint, there's no, like significant change. Like there's no way that we can measure a correlation from our standpoint. So we don't do daily optimizations. And I think that, I don't know, we just don't.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say the one like outlier use case may be on either certain high traffic days, Prime Day, Cyber Monday or something, where you like need to do some very quick reactive things.
Yep.
Or, say potentially on a product launch where you're checking it daily, no impressions, increasing bid, like that whole workflow. So
I would agree with that 100%. We do the same. Exactly.
Yeah.
What you said, Liz.
Yeah. So outlying use case. So to me, daily actions, what we're doing, I mean, at least for me, unless you disagree with, is we're tracking.
Yep. We track. Yeah. We track daily by daily. So just looking at, we use a change log. So me and my team, we record the changes that we make in a spreadsheet. Our software also keeps a change log of everything. And if you look at Amazon, they keep a change log. They have a keyword history. So, and if you want, I mean, change logs are very simple. It's a Google sheet where you put the change that you made, the date that you made it, and then any files that, contain those changes. So you don't have to do that, but we do that just because it allows us to be like, hey, we made this adjustment, 7 days ago. So what happened 7 days before we made the adjustment? And then what happened 7 days after we made the adjustment? So, that allows us to track. So going back to tracking, we use that change log because it allows us to track anything we've made adjustments to. And then, we can be like, oh, wow. Over time patterns develop, because if you start making similar changes over time, you're like, whoa, I think I just developed a methodology. And then you go, team, we're doing this on a weekly basis. So that's how we do tracking for our clients. We monitor, we use our change log to find out when we made changes. We do before and afters. And then we figure out, hey, was it helpful? Wasn't it helpful? And we go from there.
Yeah, that's really good. And so a lot of people use software to track these things, ourselves included, because pulling daily data is quite tedious. And then honestly, if you're doing it correctly, you probably should be going back at least 30 days and back updating things. It's a whole thing.
Yep.
If someone was to track it manually, like say someone has like a VA on their team or it's their first account, and so they're like, okay, I need to track. What things would they be looking at? Like, what would be the
For like
main
the change log
KPIs?
or for
Not necessarily change log. I'm thinking of tracking data.
oh, like so how would someone hire someone to track data for them basically?
Yeah. So, I mean, my thoughts, and this is how we used to do it before we had software, is we had a spreadsheet, right? So, our team would record the date, and then we had certain columns that would correspond to the data points to
Yep.
track changes over time. Now, you can go into Ad Console and you can obviously, look at the graph, and that's really, really helpful.
Yep.
But the problem with that is if you're only ever looking at Campaign Manager, that only gives you the advertising view. That doesn't give you total
Yep.
account view.
We
Which the
use
best thing
Sellerboard.
is, yeah.
We use a tool, a profit tracking tool called Sellerboard that allows us to look at profit per SKU and look
Mm-hmm.
at margin per SKU and look at sales per SKU so that when we do make changes, we can look at the before and after. So in terms of tracking changes, um, our software does it. So we have our ppcagility.com, that's our software that does bid optimization. And then what it does, it logs it. So it
Mm-hmm.
creates a change log where you can go in and look at when the cuts, when the adjustments were made and literally
Mm-hmm.
open up a file that says, hey, here's the before, here's the after. So that's a great question. What I would do there, I know what you're saying. It's like, you know, I would say to simplify it, the way that we like track everything is like we don't make like adjustments per keyword. Like we don't go in and make like we don't have like we have formulas. So
Mm-hmm.
like for example, we have a system called like cut bleeders or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So in my change log, I might write down cut bleeders on this date. And
Mm-hmm.
then we know my whole team knows what that means. It means this, that, or the other. So that helps us with tracking. We have the systems already built out. So like our team can just put in this, that, or the other. So it's based on, it should be based on like an optimization system. Like if you go in and make 10 different changes with 10 different keywords or 100 different, where there's no like
Mm-hmm.
formulaic approach, then it's almost impossible to track, man. So you have to
Yeah.
have like a more formulaic system, standardized approach to optimization so that it makes it easier to track changes.
Yeah. No, I would agree. So you're saying like when recording changes, just use a universal naming system for your team. So you
Yep.
say like bid optimizations, in your case, it's a very specific bid optimization, or I adjusted the budget, or I paused certain things, or I did, which we'll probably get to in the daily. But I'm thinking also of if our optimizations, everything is goal oriented. So I'm trying to affect this change. For
Yep.
me, the daily tracking is more like, what am I trending towards goal?
Yeah.
Am I improving? Am I not improving? So to me, the daily tracking, and when I say daily tracking, I don't necessarily mean I'm only looking at today's date.
Yeah. It means you're looking at like, you're doing like custom analyses. So it's like
Right.
you just look daily at the data. So like you're not looking at like yesterday to today. You're looking at the changes you made, and then you'll go through accounts or whatever it is and be like
Mhm.
on a daily basis do analysis. Yeah, I
Right.
see what you're saying. Yep.
So I think, I mean, for us, we look at total, and if you don't have a good software, so we use KPOQ, KAPOQ. We love it. It also tracks information down to a SKU level.
Yep.
And so we have the ability to look down to a SKU level. If you're manually inputting and tracking it yourself, don't kill yourself going down to a SKU level. It's
Yeah.
really, really hard to make sense of that sheer volume of data at
Yep.
that granular of a level.
Yep.
If you don't have a really good dashboard and analysis for it, you're going to drive yourself crazy. So, my recommendation is going to be, at the very least, get a spreadsheet, stick a column of dates down the left, and then I would enter in these columns. So, for us, we do total sales, we do sessions, which is total traffic. We do unit session percentage. We would do, I think, total orders. We do ad sales. We do ad spend. And then you could do more of this. I also like to look at ad conversion rates. You honestly could infinitely add to this.
Yeah.
But I think I would be fine with just ACOS, tacos, and then we also like ad sale percentage. You could probably leave that one off. If I had to pick just as a couple on this list, I would say total sales sessions, impressions, click through rate might also be helpful here. But again, you notice how this list gets quite exhaustive. And honestly, I think both tools that we use have way more than this in terms of what they're tracking. And at some level, again, you're like, just give me the condensed version because I need to make sense of it. But for us, why daily track? And it could be as easy as a daily spot check. Go in, check this. Maybe just by sheer nature of taking these and entering them into a spreadsheet, you're going to be checking them. So enter them into the spreadsheet, notice the changes. So classic example. We had a larger client with a very large catalog and clothing. They're always in and out of stock.
Yep.
We got a directive to significantly lower the ad spend on certain products that were going out of stock. Now, these products made up a larger percentage of the total spend volumes because they're, good selling products. We did decrease in line with the directives, but because these products made up such a significant portion of the ad spend, the ad spend the next day dropped significantly.
Yep.
And the client was asking like, hey, is this in line? Now it was in line with what we were directed to do, but since we're checking daily and then noticing the delta between where we were yesterday and where we are today, we're like, that's a significant decrease. So maybe the decrease or the optimizations that were made, although again, in line with what we were told, maybe we need to readjust a couple things because those products had such significant ad spend, it really directed ad spend of the entire account, which could long-term affect total sales volume. So therefore, maybe and the reason why that was caught is looking at daily spend and saying, oh, there's been a significant decrease here, or say total sales volume decreases. Maybe we made some optimizations and we noticed, oh, shoot. Now, there will be general fluctuations, but if you have a stable enough account where you kind of understand and you're like, okay, weekends are a little bit down, you start to see your patterns. So if something is outside of your patterns, you can say, oh, that's not what I would expect. And then that leads you to go and troubleshoot the account versus if you're checking it daily, you're like, you know what, this is fine. Like I'm happy. I'm seeing steady growth. All the other KPIs are in line. Then maybe you can, that things are chugging along and you're doing fine. So to us, the daily data spot check is, it's kind of like a fire drill, check, make sure nothing's out of line. If yes, continue as usual. If no, investigate further.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, because tracking's not all about making changes. Tracking's about understanding patterns and how different data points work together. And also, like you said, understanding fluctuations. Like I think that like I had an account that I think a lot of people make the mistake of looking at daily data and then like acting on it. The goal is I had an account I was working with where they're like looking at daily sales and they're like, oh, they went down this day and up that. And I'm like, that's part of the selling on Amazon. You have to look for patterns over weekly, maybe 3 days, weekly. So figuring out what time frames you need to nail down. So that's why like tracking is good because it just kind of like sharpens the tool of analysis. So, getting in there and just looking at information, you'll start to like pick up on patterns. And then once you sniff out those patterns, you'll be able to make more educated decisions around what happened. Like in Liz's example, their team had known that spend was, X percent or X dollars, and then it goes down by 40% the next day. They knew that that's a red flag and that has never happened before. So it was an alarm for them because they had been watching the data over time. So getting good at that is really helpful because then you'll be able to kind of like sniff out normal fluctuations from anomalies. And if you mistake them, you might cause poor performance because then you over optimize or you optimize
Mhm.
out of like an impulse off of like a less effective analysis.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that that's a good segue into the weekly because we talked
Yep.
about optimizing, like is making changes up or down.
Yep.
And I think as we get into the weekly, it would be helpful to know like what actually is over optimizing. How to hack. And for me, and I think that's why it's important to differentiate daily is more like a tracking spot check. If something is broken, fix it,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
otherwise, everything has a much longer cadence than people think,
Yep.
is because over optimizing is simply changing things before you actually have enough data to be sure of that change.
Yep.
That's how I would define over optimizing. I don't know if
That's
you have a
how I would
different.
define it too, to be honest.
Now, there are bid optimization tools. One that we use as well, it's called KPOC, which
Yep.
do make daily bid changes. The
Oh,
thing with the daily bid changes is any good tool that is making daily bid changes is
yeah.
not actually changing bids based on yesterday's data or today's data.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they're looking over a long enough time horizon, sort of seeing what that trending update is, and then adjusting the bids based on that.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
there are some times where when they say daily bid optimizations, that doesn't mean that every single bid must be adjusted daily.
Yep.
Any good tool, any tool that's just changing things just to change things is over optimizing. A
Yep.
good tool is going to say, where do I have statistical significance enough to be certain of this change? And then it will change again based on should be a longer time horizon of data. Now there are other ad platforms out there where data updates come in a lot more frequently. With
Yep.
Amazon advertising, they have about a 12, it's a 12-hour window. It used to be 24, but even the first 24 hours is not 100%.
No,
And then
it's
it also has a 7 and 14-day look back window in
yep.
terms of the orders reported.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with that being said, I know we're a little bit in, but I feel like we laid some really good groundwork. If we could go over, maybe if we just bang out like what do we see as the weekly optimizations, and then
Yep.
maybe we could just go and then backfill, kind of like sections underneath that.
Weekly for us are mainly optimization down. We don't really do up optimizations just
Hmm.
because our bid, we do mainly like what we'll do is Monday and Thursday. Like just to get started, we do Monday, we cut bleeders, which we define. If it's like,
So that's bid optimization.
yeah, bids, we do 8 clicks or more. So if it has, yeah, clicks. So in the last 14 days, if a keyword, a product target, or a auto target has 0 orders and 8 clicks, greater than or equal to 8 clicks, then we decrease it to 25% below the cost per click and spends over $1. That's what we do on Monday and Thursday. And then we do that, and that helps a ton. That's like one of our, and that's our beginning with 2 times a week. You can increase it or decrease it. Like I have people who use our software and do it every day actually, and they do
Mm-hmm.
it every day. But like I would start off with 2 times a week, catching those bleeding keywords. Now if you're, that's for like products that are consumer priced, like $60 or $70 and below. If you're higher than that and your conversion rate's a lot lower, I would increase that to like 12 to 15 clicks. So I want to make a difference based on price points, because different price points do have different conversion rates, and you can go every $10 or whatever. But what we've done is like, if it's like a higher price point and a lower conversion rate, we need a higher click threshold because the buying cycle is longer. If it's a lower price point, higher conversion rate, we can use that 8 clicks or more. So we do 12 to like 15 for like higher priced products. And a lot of my students do that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
other than cut bleeders, which is, I mean, cut bleeders, I think that's pretty common language in our industry, which
It
is
is.
basically like, what are the things that are getting a bunch of clicks and are not generating any sales? And to Sean's point of like not over optimizing. He's saying like, look, take a look at your conversion rate. How what your conversion rate is will determine how many clicks on average it takes you to make a sale.
Yep.
So you're waiting until you have enough data. In this case, in most cases of bids, it's enough clicks to be able to say, hey, this is, this particular keyword is not converting for my product. So therefore, I probably don't want to spend more on it. In
Yep.
addition to that, which is a really good workflow, what else are you adjusting bids on?
And really quick, I want to just say this is for like mature products, not launches. So
Yeah.
this is going to be for mature products, not launches. Um, the other one is like we call it the G formula. That's what we call it. Um, Basically, what it does is it finds the difference between your current ACOS. So we use the last 14 days, the difference between your current ACOS and your target ACOS, and it decreases it based on that data. So if your current ACOS is 50% and your target's 30%, then you would decrease the bid by 20%. But what we do is to prevent, because sometimes, like for example, you have a 30% ACOS and your target, oh no, you have a 200% ACOS and your target's 30, then when you decrease that bid, it'll be like a negative number. So then if it goes below 80% of the cost per click, the formula defaults it to 80% of the cost
Mm-hmm.
per click. And we've done that, you know, dude, I made that formula up, to be honest, years ago. And it works. I think that there are different variations. I mean, there's so many people who have different ways that they look at things in this industry. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's about figuring out what works for you and what works for your accounts. So if this stuff helps you, then use it. And if not, don't use it. And we do that once a week. So we call that the G formula. We do that once a week, minimum. Minimum. I think it depends on your cadence of launching campaigns. If you're launching campaigns a lot, then you're going to want to do that more. Yeah, 1 to 2 times.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do it, you can do this at the product level. Like you can create these formulas for like just your products, or you can do it, we do it at the SKU level, which is a
Mm-hmm.
little more granular, but you can start off at the product level. And to determine your target ACOS, I would say to calculate that, don't do it based off of where you want to be. Do it based off of where you are in the last 14 days minus 10 to 20%. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you have 100% ACOS and you want a 20% ACOS and then you put that in as your target, your traffic's going to die. And it's going to
Mm-hmm.
go and it's going to have a graveyard and a headstone and it's going to be gone. But your target should be like, hey, if you're in the last 14 days you're at 100%, then maybe your target should be like 80%.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you do it too low, it can kill off keyword traffic. And honestly, man, my position on this formula, it's evolving over time because it's getting harder and harder just to generate sales on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
So like my target ACOS is going higher and higher because I'm like, dude, I'm okay with it being higher because if our profitability is good, we're good to go. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I would do with that one. And that's, dude, simple. Keep it simple. And then what do? You write these down in a spreadsheet and then you figure out, hey, when I made these adjustments, what are you looking for? What are you tracking
Mm-hmm.
when you make these adjustments? Well, you go in, you find the keyword, because I think what people do is they tend to look at the account level or even the
Yeah.
product, the SKU level. But that's not, I mean, that's helpful. But if you really want to know the nitty gritty, you need to figure out, hey, what did I cut last week? And how much is it
Mm-hmm.
spending this week? And, do a sample overview. Hey, we cut 5 keywords last week with the cut bleeders on Monday and Wednesday. Let's look at spend for the past 7 days before we made the adjustments and spend after. That
Mm-hmm.
tells you if it worked or not, right? If your
Yeah.
impressions go down, your clicks go down, you have full proof that it does it. Because if you look at the account level and the SKU level, you've got so many keywords, so many campaigns, it can be really hard to measure outcomes at that level. But if you
Mm-hmm.
go down to that granular level and see that data at the target level, then you and look at samples of it, you can look at the whole data set. If you can filter it, obviously there are ways to like do pivot tables and see the whole, you filter by those keywords, doing all that. But if you want to keep it simple, pull a sample of 5, and see if it went down. And then that sample size will tell you, okay, wow, there's some efficacy to this change that I made. And it
Mm-hmm.
proves whether or not it works. Don't try to look at the higher level stuff, because you got to you want to get to a 1-to-1. When you make
Mm-hmm.
an adjustment, you want to get to a 1-to-1. And when you think like that, what's nice is it builds confidence, so that even if like the top level something happened, you can confidently go in and be like, hey, we made the adjustments here. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's so important to have that 1-to-1 accurate analysis, is because, I mean, for your own business, it's important because you develop that skill set if you're an Amazon seller. But if you're consulting for someone else, you can show them proof of what's going on, and see that you're actually making an impact.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's very similar. So we were talking in the beginning about like, oh, like, stealing other people's stuff. So that was one of the things, I don't want to say like I stole but borrowed was the G
Knowledge
formula.
is never,
And so
Yep,
there's a couple formulas out there of adjusting bits.
yep,
One is the incremental approach, which means increase by 5 cents. Like it's a set value of increase or decrease. The other popular one would be your G formula, which basically says, this target is 80%. My target is, like you said, go incremental here. So maybe like 60%. And then what is the difference in percentage wise? And what is that difference when applied to the bits?
yeah,
The other one that is very popular is it's called like a revenue per click model. It basically says if my goal target is 30%, what would my cost per click have had to have been to achieve that 30%? And then you apply there. Now, I'm going to give you a sneak peek into our bid algorithm, which we leverage KPOC as well for bids. So what I did when developing our bid algorithm, it was somewhat similar to what Sean was saying as I went through. And I know we're taking a lot of time on bids, but I feel like this is the one thing that everybody wants the super secret hack formula for. So
yep.
I think it's a good thing to dig into. And actually, if you go to our YouTube channel, I kind of talk about our bid algorithm and like sort of how it kind of came about. And it's very similar to Sean's, like, don't go below 20% of the cost per click, or look at where you are and just go 10 to 20 points below. So I think we've all been, if you've been in Amazon advertising for any length of time, you've gone in, you see something that's very high costs, and you've thought, oh, well, that's too high. So therefore optimization is go towards goals. If I want to go towards goals of lower, I need to lower the cost per click. And so therefore I'm going to optimize this bid. I'm going to lower it significantly.
Yep.
Then you go into your account the next day and sales are down and ACOS hasn't moved. You're like, what gives? I optimize the bids, I cut down on my high ACOS stuff, and sometimes ACOS even gets worse and sales get worse. This is the opposite of what I wanted to happen. This is not the goal. How do I fix it? And so what we find out over time is that because Amazon advertising has this auction attached to it,
Yep.
and that auction is determined by what your competitors are willing to pay. I hear a lot of new sellers say, like, I can't believe cost per clicks are this high. This is crazy. Yes, I would agree with you, but at the same time, somebody is willing to pay that. Yeah. Amazon would not charge that if somebody was not willing to pay it. That's why we used to get 10-cent cost per clicks back in the day, because nobody was willing to pay more than 10 cents. Yep. Now some bids are upwards of $20. I kid you not. There are some spaces where it's bananas.
Yeah. Yep. I've seen $49. Well, I didn't see it, but somebody posted $49. Which I've seen 75. Yeah, and I mainly see those on sponsored brands, to be honest. I don't see them on sponsored products that much, the bigger ones. I saw it was a $75 cost per click on a bid. Cool. On a sponsored product. Cool. It was cool because I'm a nerd, but not cool because it's bad. No, it was crazy. It was crazy. That was something we cut. That made no sense. It was a new account we got, and we're like, why is this in here? So that was something. But so going back to thinking through bids. So what you're trying to do is basically say, how much can I get away with when I'm lowering? How much can I get away with it and
not have it hurt my sales volume. And what we started to move towards, because we would go in and things, and what we recognized over time, just through like School of Hard Knocks, is if anything has a high amount of orders that is triggered through it, it has a significant impact on the total account orders. So therefore, it's something we're a little bit more sensitive with. And when I say sensitive with, is how close or far away are we going to adjust the bid relative to the cost per click? That's our benchmark. So there are some times where we might even go much less than 20% below the cost per click because we recognize that it has significant value. I'll also tell you some other problems we ran into. So I did that for a while.
Yep.
So if something is a high order volume, be very sensitive with the CPC on it and, don't lower it down too much. And we had like a benchmark built in. It was above X amount of orders. And then, we're going to be sensitive. What we found is that by nature, auto campaigns, broad match campaigns, all of our broader targeting inherently has a higher order volume to it. And so what happened is our counts naturally got shifted to more reliant on broader targeting due to that check. So then what we put in place was a check to say, okay, if this is an exact match keyword and it has a high order volume format, maybe a phrase match, we're still going to apply those sensitivity metrics, meaning we're only going to go, and for us, it's a variable, but for you, you might want to have a constant, like 10% below the cost per click, equivalent to the cost per click, depending on how important it is to you.
Yep.
But for our broader match keywords, we may not be as sensitive to those ones because we're not trying to have the entire account skewed to using like broad match as like our main sales driver. And so that's kind of how we go about it. Now, I think with the zero orders, those I think everyone pretty much agrees across the board. If it's not having any impact on sales and it's impacting the ad spend, that's your easiest place to cut. And be pretty confident of those cuts. And that's a huge workflow. I think the other workflow in terms of bid adjustments is things with no impressions. Increasing things with no impression. Now here, at least my personal opinion, an incremental approach is the most useful. Because what I found is if your bids are, say, at $1, if you did, increase everything by 10% or something like it was a variable like that, well, then your dollar bid got increased 10 cents and your 10-cent bid got increased next to nothing. So what we'll do in these cases is we'll say, okay, if we have, keywords with 0 impressions, increase bids by 10 cents, 5 cents, something like that. I'm going to write that one down. The other thing I would say is we will skip the 0 impression increase if we're struggling, if our goal is to lower ad spend. We'll skip it.
Yep. That makes sense because you're kind of like, you have conflicting optimizations in a way because you're increasing the low stuff and then you're overall trying to bring it down.
Mm-hmm. If we had to pick, say, a couple more like high value things, maybe we'll skip monthly and quarterly for now. But if we had to give them like a weekly, honestly, bids to me, picking the right keywords and getting the right bid adjustments. If you got those two things right, I think you get a lot of other things wrong and still win out in the account. Yep. But if you had to do like a hit list of like, these are the weekly optimizations that are going to like absolutely make the most of your account, what would those be?
Large accounts, for like larger accounts, for smaller accounts, this one that I'm going to reference is not as important, but for larger accounts that have a lot of campaigns, we do budget optimizations on a weekly basis. Mm-hmm. So what we do is in the last 30 days, if a campaign has not generated any sales, we just pause it. So every Monday, my team goes in. And so, here's a little detail I want to throw in there is that you don't just go in and filter by the last 30 days, 0 spend. You also need to filter out the start date of campaigns, because you don't, if you launched a campaign last week and you look at the last 30 days, you're only looking at
Mhm.
7 days for that one who had a last week start date. So you need to apply a
Mm.
filter to get rid of all of the campaigns that are 30 days or younger. You need to get rid of the little babies, the 30 days or younger ones, and then get the more mature accounts that are over 30 days and then pause those. So that's a huge one that I think a
And
lot of
those are the ones you said with what? Zero.
zero sales in the last 30 days and have, their start date of 30 days or older, basically. And then as time goes on, those ones that were launched last week, 3 weeks from now, will have a month's worth of data that you can then do. And then I haven't built a system for this, and I do this a couple times a week, is I do dial back budgets on, higher ACOS uh, campaigns, just because, I think that, like, if we wanted to, name this list, it would be like profit focused Amazon PPC optimization checklist, because right now where
Yeah.
the market's at, it's profitability. And not only the market, I watch a lot of Shark Tank. Guys,
Hmm.
you don't even want to know my obsession with Shark Tank, Dragon's Den Canada, Dragon's Den UK, Shark Tank India. I've watched a lot of it. And you can see when you see, like, the sharks talking to uh,
Hmm.
these business owners, and all of the sharks favor profitability over
Hmm.
less profitable companies. So, we're really in a time where profit is the most important. And so, that's where, I would say, when it comes to context around this stuff, it's really about that. That's why, we're focusing so much on bid optimizations and, like, cutting things back, and even budget. Like, we can talk about, like, keyword research and stuff like that, but, these are for more mature accounts that are, running
Hmm.
on an ongoing basis. So, with profitability being so important, finding little ways that we can save a few dollars here or there just adds up over time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
With I think I missed it because I think the one action is pausing campaigns.
Yep.
You said with zero sales, I think I put
Yeah.
spend.
Zero sales. Yep. Yep.
Got
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
Do you have a specific spend on that, or you just get rid of them?
Just get rid of them, man. Just get rid of them, because it's been too long. And, you most likely will have campaigns that are doing well. I mean, if you've done your keyword research and launched campaigns out of your launch, you're going to have a good plethora of keywords that are doing well. So getting rid of those won't be. And this is definitely for larger accounts, and it's worked. We've tested it and measured the outcomes, and it's worked pretty reliably for us. It hasn't really hurt sales at all. It's helped
Yeah.
conversion as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, like caveat on that is like if you're on a launch and you haven't found a single campaign over 30 days that's driving sales, one, that's a huge problem. That's probably outside of the ads.
Yep.
But like don't pause your like obviously
Yeah.
use logic here. Like
Yep.
if that means you're gonna like pause ads for half the account's products, well, again, there's probably issues outside of the ad console that need to be optimized, where there's a targeting issue, maybe there's a reevaluation issue, but
Yep.
that should, get you use logic. That's what you're saying, like larger accounts. There's typically a lot more you launch with larger budgets.
Yep.
When it came to optimizing budgets, you said lower budgets on high cost campaigns, correct?
Yeah, we look at the last, like, 14 days, and then we'll go in and we'll, like, the goal isn't to, like, go from, like, 20 to $10. The goal is to go from, like, 20 to 18. Really looking at this one, I can't really give, like, a thing for, like, in terms of, yeah, lower slowly and then measure the outcomes and see how it impacts profit. We have seen, for our accounts, we do have more mature accounts and they've been around for a while, but what we've seen, it's not a huge sample size, it's like a few accounts, but, like, lowering those budgets really helps with profit per SKU and the overall profit of the
Mm-hmm.
account, because, you know, you might be overestimating your advertising's impact on your organic sales. You might actually be able to save a couple bucks and not need to pay for those clicks, and you still rank. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
all about that incremental stuff that you can do to help eke out more margin over time. Fees aren't getting less, inflation's not slowing down. So it's eking out more dollars per SKU these days.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we had to throw another couple things, because I mean, to me, these weekly things, if you're looking at campaign budgets, you're doing your bid adjustments. Again, optimizing budgets, I think is a huge one that nobody talks about.
I
Positive
agree.
campaigns, that's another great one. Um,
Totally agree.
but when it comes to, I think if I had to throw a last hit one in here, I probably would add negative keywords.
Yep. Yep.
Is there, I mean, for us, I would put the caveat favoring exact match.
We don't use negative keywords really.
There you go.
Yeah. So like, I mean, I know I've always kind of like been on the outskirts for this one, to be honest. I'm kind of like a lone wolf, I guess, in this area, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just we haven't found a systematic way to, I mean, I would love to see one, but like when it comes to exact or negative keywords, it's very manual. I mean, I highly recommend,
Yeah.
I'm not against doing it, but like only in situations where it's like completely irrelevant and like it
Mm-hmm.
should never even pop up. But like we've seen situations where search terms that were super relevant that got no sales were negatived and then like sales were impacted, which really
Mm-hmm.
like was bizarre to me. We had one student where he had a tool that would automatically do negatives. This was a while ago.
Yeah.
He removed all the negatives and his account went through the roof in terms of sales. So like, I haven't done a lot of scientific stuff on it, but negatives are a tricky one, man. Negatives, yeah, irrelevant. Definitely use a qualitative check. Use your eyes to determine if it's super irrelevant. Yeah,
Yeah.
manual
I would
oversight.
definitely say use manual oversight here. I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah,
So Kpot actually has a really good way where we can set certain click through rate, impression parameters. And what it does is it will trigger those. And
yep,
then the other benefit is it looks back all time from when the account was hooked up. So as soon as the account gets hooked up, it goes back, what is it, 60 or 90 days is how much data you can pull.
yeah,
And then it will continuously look at the search term. So the thing with, if you're pulling like say search term reports or you're looking in the ad console, you can only look back 60 days
yep,
versus if you're continuously pulling that data and just looking at it over time. So what it does is we have a really quick check parameter. We can go in and it says, what are all the search terms from all time that
yep.
have triggered these parameters? And then we can manually choose to apply that list. That's our workflow.
Cool.
So it is a manual workflow. We leverage automations to be able to do that a lot quicker. But I would agree with you. I am not a huge fan of setting up an automatic negative anything.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Yeah. I love your workflow. I love that you guys use automations. You know me, I'm a big fan of automations
Yeah,
as like a way to just speed things up a little bit.
for sure. Would you say check? I mean, for me, I don't even think that's weekly. It's maybe once every other week, potentially weekly if you're using them a lot. But do you ever adjust placement percentages?
We don't really use them. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. I've tested them. I just it's hard, man. Like it's people talking about rank and like, but when you look at how if you look at the math and how Amazon does rank, we don't know. Like geography, in proximity to inventory, your cookies that there's so much. So honestly, we've tested it and it's been hit or miss, but we have not seen that it's like personally, we haven't really seen that as a game changer. Even when we would like do an analysis and see that like, oh, this placement did better than this one. When we tested it on its own, it didn't really like. I mean, I did only a few tests, like 5 or something like that. But like, it never was a game changer for us, man. It really hasn't been something where we're like, man, this is awesome. And it does, when you're scaling an account, it adds on a very heavy level of complexity. It really does because you can't just look at bids anymore. You're looking at percentages. So, you got to look at the complexity in your systems as well. And you have to analyze whether or not adding that complexity is worth the return that you get. And so we don't really use the placement percentages, to be honest. Like we'll look at them, but like, I don't know, like isolated.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think, Liz? Are you guys using it?
I agree with that. I will say we do use placements when it makes sense to do so.
Cool.
The other thing is, so I'm going to put in here check placement percentages, and I'm just going to say make sure you don't have any high placements that are no longer working for you. Because the thing that I've seen with a lot of accounts is they'll set up placements one time randomly and then never check them again. So if you are using placements, I would say check them weekly. If you're not using placements, you've heard it here, you'll be fine.
You will be fine. I coach. I do coaching for education business that teaches people how to sell on Amazon. And I'm telling you, the fundamentals are the same, dude. It's the same stuff. It's just launching products and getting really good at your and like the sponsored, mainly sponsored products. To be honest, just launch more products that are unique, have a good return on investment, low competition. It's the same stuff. It's just you got to find it, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think you would not believe the amount of questions I get on placement percentages and the amount of times I have someone say, I'm not getting a good placement on product pages. How do I eliminate that from my account? And well, the answer is you can't.
Yeah.
And I guess I've kind of been, what can I control to any relative degree? And how can I make sure, like you said, have good methodologies, have good practices that allow me to move towards the goals? So good optimization, not over optimizing. So over optimizing, again, making adjustments before you have the data to do so. Like Sean was talking about when he was saying pause campaigns. Hey, make sure you're not pausing anything that doesn't have at least 30 days worth of data on it, right? So we're not over optimizing.
Yep.
But we're also not under optimizing. So as soon as we get that data, that's when we make the optimizations. And data with Amazon advertising, for the most part, is clicks. On some level, it's impressions as well. But really, most optimizations are made at a certain click threshold. So it's like, do we have the data? Yes or no? Make the optimizations. And do we have control over it? So in the example of, say, dynamic up and down bidding, inherently, not a lot of people know this, but sponsored display ads inherently have a dynamic up and down built into them, and it's a 300% up and down. I can't control that. There are no parameters. There's nothing I can control. So in that case, what am I controlling? I'm controlling it at my bid level. That's my level of control. So in the case of placement percentages, my theory has always been, like, if there's something that's not working as well, we haven't seen a low bid and a high placement percentage work well in terms of driving enough sales volume. We've just seen it really just hurts impressions. And so very similar to you, we leverage them to help sort of increase our bids on some levels if something's working. But we don't heavily rely on them. And also, again, there's not as much control there oftentimes. So we try to let go of the things that we can't control and control the things we can.
Yep, that's exactly right. 100%. And it adds on that complexity too. You know, figuring out, is that complexity worth the return you're getting? You know, is it, or could you be doing something else to get better returns? You know, that's where, because time is a finite item on a daily basis. So figuring out what works and what doesn't, and where your energy needs to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we were to give someone this checklist, say you handed someone this checklist, do you think they would be well off, or is there something that you would want to tell them?
The only one I would add is like, you know, pulling search terms, like doing some growth stuff. So like, you know, if you have a mature product that's been running for a while and you've done some research, like every couple weeks, you know, converting search terms and testing, I think, like, or doing keyword research, like, and deduplicating. You know, I think deduplication is one of those things that a lot of people I don't know if they do that often, but, and I know it's impossible to really deduplicate, you know what I mean? But like getting as good as possible, you know, using, you know, formulas, but pulling search terms, testing long tail keywords using tools. So, you know, this one I don't know if we have time for it. If not, I'll just give an overview, but like every couple of weeks, making sure you go in and either, you know, try to find unique search terms, or even use tools to find unique targets that you're not bidding on. Because that's the name of the game. You know, Amazon is a real estate business, and your goal is to find real estate that's cheap. And the only way to find real estate that's cheap is to go to the land where nobody's bidding. And so the way
Mm.
to do that is to find longer tail stuff. Like, there's, for example, we use Google Translate. Like there, you can use the actual Google Translate formula in Google Sheets so that I can
Mm.
copy and paste a list of keywords in English and then just use autofill all the way down and have 100 Spanish keywords. And you can do that
Nice.
with French. So, you know, looking at those, they might not generate anything, but you got to look at the long tail. I used to do Google SEO, and man, for a software company, and they drilled into my head, man, Sean, we got to hit our long tail because our competition, we hit our short tail, but we got to hit
Mhm.
our long tail. That's how we're going to really beat out our competition over the long term. So that's a big one, man. That's something that I think is just the most tedious, boring work, but so valuable because your niche words might pop up that you hadn't thought of so
Mhm.
I would say that's another one to add in for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a huge one. And like I get questions oftentimes from newer sellers with like say the auto campaigns or the broad match campaigns,
Yep.
just being like a discovery thing. And they're like, oh, at some point I've discovered everything. So therefore I should be able to get away. And some people I hate to say it because I feel like broad match has a very special place in my heart sometimes because you can get some really low cost per clicks there. But it's like,
I like broad match.
oh, these are like the lesser, these are the ones we don't care about. Like we're not like the autos and broads or like you said, in the case of like over optimization, like adding negative keywords to those to only forcing it, like leave them running, let them do their thing. One, you just get low CPCs. It balances out your averages. But then two, those are like in a lot of ways evergreen places to mine for new keywords. So if all you're focusing in is on exact match, as soon as search behavior shifts or there's a new type of keyword that pops up or there's a new way people are looking for your product, I know your market has remained the same for the last 2 years. It may not remain the same for the next 2 years. You don't know. And
Yep.
so there's two ways you can do it. One, you could just like incessantly do keyword research and hope that you run across it someday.
Yep.
Or you can allow the algorithm to do the work for you. Again, keep bids low so you're paying lower cost per clicks. There's no need to like scale these and get really aggressive. But then go back through your search term reports. So you're looking at search term reports. Where are my new opportunities? You're plugging that into the system. The system get optimized because you're doing your bids and your budgets and everything else. And then the whole system flows together.
Yeah. Can I build on top of what you said, Liz, real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
You said, you're 2 years, your niche hasn't changed, but in those 2 years, how many new competitors that you can bid on that
Mm-hmm.
are product targeting and have lower reviews than so keeping up on not only just keywords but product targets, because remember, product targets can help you rank for keywords because they
Mm-hmm.
occupy the same ad placements as keywords do. So making sure you're keeping up on your competitors and all that stuff and bidding on your competitors keywords. We
Mm-hmm.
see really good results with competitor keywords. If you get new competitors in there, pop them in there. So watching it and testing it out, and your competitors' listings might have keywords you never have even thought of that you can test as well for like
Yeah.
new ones. Yeah.
All right. And with that, I feel like so we didn't get to monthly or the annual optimizations, but honestly, I
Annual
think this weekly
optimization.
list,
And we don't.
well, yeah, for me, I think those like either like quarterly or it's really about analysis. So which I
Same
think is
here.
a
Where we at?
completely,
Yeah.
yeah, where are we at? Where are we benchmarking at? But in terms of the optimizations, I would say again, so recapping, checking things daily, bids a couple times a week, pausing campaigns, optimizing budgets, negative keywords, checking, just checking the placement percentages, and every so often diving deep into your search term reports. And I know, like Sean said, the basics are the basics and the fundamentals work. So
Yeah.
you might see this list and think, oh, what about like launching? Or isn't there some crazy, like long list of things that, and I think we could build that, but to me, that's not what's going to be the most helpful. And these are the things that have worked for, what is it, over 6 years now, and they're still working.
Yeah.
Um, Techniques may change slightly. How much you adjust things change slightly. Like Sean was saying, things are more competitive, so we're giving a cost a little bit more leeway these days. So how exactly you tweak your parameters will probably change over time, but the actual actions and the fundamentals, to me, have remained consistent over the years.
And I have a request. Can I put in a request from the audience who watches this?
Yes, go for it.
I only have one request. Test it if you want, if you feel like it's valuable, and then look at the targets to see if you get results. And then share it with us or other people. Because if you go in and you test it and it works and you tell us that, then it only builds on our data set, right? So we all get to grow together. So, if you test it, let us know the results. We're here, whether good or bad. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
We just want to know. We want to gather information infinitely. There's no end to the game here. So that's my only ask from the people that see this.
Yeah, definitely. The more people test and then share those tests, the more we all learn, which I think is why both you and I are where we are today, is definitely through a lot of people being very, very generous. So with that, we appreciate you listening in. And again, if you want a copy of this document, we'll make sure there's links in the description. You guys can get a copy of that. And if you have any results from these tests, feel free to share them in the comments.
Yes, please do.